Welcome to the National Fund for Workforce Solutions 10th anniversary celebration. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for contributing to this occasion. My name is Fred Diedrich. I'm President and CEO of the National Fund. And I think it is appropriate that we celebrate here at the National Press Club, because it was here at the club that the National Fund was announced about a little more than 10 years ago to the workforce world. We are celebrating today because of what you have just seen in this video. Individuals whose lives have been changed because of the opportunities provided by this extraordinary collaboration of National Philanthropy, Community and Family Foundations, United Ways, Economic Development Organizations, Workforce Investment Boards, employers, community-based organizations, community colleges. Thanks to all of you and the National Fund's network of regional funder collaboratives, we have had the privilege and the success of providing thousands of individuals with the skills and opportunities to change their lives. So it is appropriate that we begin this celebration today by announcing some of these individuals whose lives have been changed. So to help us, we are going to bring up to the stage some of the workers that we have helped through the year, through the 10 years, and we're going to ask them to come forward and receive a little commemorative token of appreciation from Pete Strange, the chairman of the board of the National Fund. So I'm just going to read them up, and I hope that they can come forward. So Rodney Patrick is a AIDT Maritime Training Center welding graduate and employee at Austell USA in Mobile, Alabama. Rodney. You jumped the gun. Rodney didn't start his career in manufacturing. In fact, he entered the program later in life, having had no experience in manufacturing, but was able to learn the exact skills he needed to succeed on the job. Lori Butters is a graduate of the Central Iowa Works. Is Lori here? Okay. We're going to go to Jason Santana, is a hull design field engineer and apprentice at the Philadelphia Shipyard, a key partner of the Job Opportunity Investment Network. As you saw in the video, Jason credits the apprenticeship program for giving him the skills and experience necessary to excel at the shipyard. Jason Weevil is a youth apprentice at the Machine Specialties, a member of the Guilford Apprenticeship Partners and the Triad Workforce Solutions Collaborative in Greensboro, North Carolina. Garrison started the program while in high school and has been pairing classroom instruction with on-the-job training to develop the valuable skills in machining and metal finishing. And then we have, unfortunately, Sayante Bullock, who was in the film as well, couldn't make it today, but she is a graduate of the Partners for a Competitive Workforce, manufacturing training program, and an apprentice with Mayer Tools in Cincinnati. You met Sante in our opening video. As she said, the training program introduced her to manufacturing, the industry she is now building her career as an apprentice. So and then I want to finish Lori Butters. I think she's a little bit late, but Lori is a graduate of the Central Iowa Works Transportation, Distribution, and Logistics Training Program, and a full-time employee at the U.S. Postal Service in Des Moines, Iowa. Lori's daughter, Kyle, is joining us as well. I hope they'll be here soon. Lori says that Kyle was her inspiration to not only join, but to succeed in the program and start a career that would support her and her family. So let's have a round of applause for all these workers. It is appropriate, as I said earlier, that we celebrate here at the National Press Club. And while I was thinking about this event today, I happened to see a plaque outside this room dedicated to Martin Luther King for a speech he gave here in July of 1962. And in the words on that speech, which was delivered before his I Have a Dream speech at the Washington Monument, he said the following: We are simply asking to bring into full realization the American dream, a dream yet unfulfilled, a dream of equality of opportunity, of privilege and property widely distributed, a dream of land where men no longer argue that the color of a man's skin determines the content of his character, a dream of a land where every man will respect the dignity and the worth of the human personality. So it's so appropriate that we celebrate here our 10th anniversary. And I'm delighted to bring up to the stage for opening remarks for this celebration Peter Scher, the head of corporate responsibility for JPMorgan Chase. Peter is the chairman of the Washington, D.C. region, the head of corporate responsibility. He serves as the firm's senior executive in the region, representing the firm to clients, government leaders, and the community. Prior to his current position, he held senior roles in government and the law and has been active on a range of political and public policy issues. Peter, please join us.
Fred, thank you, and it's great to be here. Welcome to Washington. It's a beautiful day in Washington, a little unusual for late November, but we arranged it just for you guys. So it is really, it's really a thrill to be here to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the fund. You know, the work that you do, your mission, the leadership you provide, I think it was important 10 years ago. I think it is even more important today. The challenge of giving more people an opportunity to share in the rewards of a growing economy, the disparities that exist in our society right now are just simply unsustainable. And so the fund's mission to prepare workers to succeed is essential. It's really at the heart of how we create opportunity, build more prosperous, and frankly, build a more just society that people can participate in. And you understand, I think, better than most, that helping people develop those skills that they need will really transform their lives and build, those are the things that are needed to build local communities. Too many people are struggling today to find jobs. Almost 7 million unemployed, and not even talking about people who are underemployed or have taken themselves out of the market, and 6 million unfilled jobs in our country today, and the labor market is going to continue to tighten. And so there's never been a more urgent time, and frankly, maybe if we look at it on the bright side, a more opportune time to explore new and creative solutions. And you know, we come at this from the perspective, obviously, of philanthropy, but I'll tell you, as the firm's senior executive in this region, we also come at this from a perspective of as a bank, as a large employer. We employ 180,000 people around this country, 250,000 around the world. We have clients who tell us they're struggling to fill a lot of their positions, even entry-level positions. Almost 60% of American companies are concerned today about finding talent, including entry-level talent. So we see this challenge that you all are undertaking not simply as a moral challenge, which it is, or something that we need to work on for the social good, which we do. We recognize it's in the interest of our company. It's in the interest of our economy. It is a business responsibility. It's not a social responsibility. We have a business responsibility to do what we can do to help solve these challenges, because we can't grow if people aren't working. Our clients can't grow. Communities can't grow if people aren't working. So there's a pressing need to do even more. And so several years ago, almost 5 years ago, we decided that we had to do more, and we had to dedicate much more of our time and resources to undertaking significant and long-term initiatives. We committed over $300 million, but we also recognized that money alone cannot solve this problem. That we have seen too much money, both public and private, fail to result in long-term impact. And we need to strengthen the underlying systems, particularly nonprofits, that are working to make change in your community. And so as we think about these types of challenges, our mantra, our focus is, how do we work the problem? How do we understand the challenge we're trying to address, and what are the range of resources and capability and data and relationships with other large employers that we can bring to help drive change. And so we have this model, and we're focused on areas which are not exclusive, but we think we can bring the most change. We focus on small business expansion, we focus on neighborhood revitalization, we focus on financial health, and the big thing we focus on in communities is the topic today. We focus on workforce development, trying to get people the skills that they need to succeed. And to be honest, we see this this is not just a US challenge. There is not a community in the world that I would go to on behalf of JPMorgan Chase in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, and Latin America. We don't see this problem. In China, 30% of young people who graduate from Chinese universities can't find jobs. So this is a global problem, and so we decided we had to get smarter about it and frankly go hire people who knew what they were talking about. And so Whitney Smith, who I think many of you know, who we stole away from the Joyce Foundation, and Jenny Sparendar, who's sitting by, who ran the if you heard someone clapping every time Philadelphia was mentioned in that video, that was Jenny. And I saw my colleague Michelle Henry just came in the back, and Chauncey. So we went out and said, if we're going to do this, we got to do this right. And let's go hire some really smart people. We developed new skills at work and new skills at youth to commit $325 million. And what we realize is making progress requires genuine partnerships. And there is not, Fred, an organization that serves as a better example of this than the National Fund. And you said it in the video, 33 communities, 7,000 employers, 700 local funders, $315 million to build highly effective programs serving thousands of workers. And it was great to see the workers who were recognized earlier. So we're a proud partner. We've invested nearly $3 million in the fund itself. We've committed another $8 million through our partnership in more than half of the communities. I'll start with Louisville, but we'll mention Atlanta and Boston and Chicago and Cincinnati. Jenny and Whitney are both active participants in the board and the Partners Council and local collaborators. And one of the places, and Fred, if I'm going on too long, you can tell me to stop, but one of the places we've really seen how much this makes a difference is in Detroit. And I think, as many of you know, we made an enormous investment in Detroit, now $150 million investment about 4 years ago. Earlier this year, the unemployment rate fell from a high of 28% in 2009 to 8.4%. I mean, that is real progress. Still too many people not working, but that is real progress. And if you didn't see Fortune magazine, which highlighted our work in Detroit and ranked us as the #1 company changing the world, if you didn't see that, it's because we bought all the copies. But it's something we're deeply proud of. But if you have a chance to go online and read the article, what's more important is it demonstrates that the only way you're going to make change is through real collaboration, real partnership on the ground in communities. And Detroit is an example, working with the National Funds Network. We've been funding now the Detroit Collaborative since 2014, the Detroit Regional. Is there anyone from Detroit here? I was just curious, no? Okay. Well, just tell them I'm talking about them. We've been funding the Collaborative, the workforce partnership since 2014. Our colleague Tasha Tabrone, who's probably busy in Detroit working, is now recently became the co-chair of the Collaborative. And we've been working with your team and with the mayor to build a more effective workforce system. We've got major initiatives. 15,000 people through our work have gotten training and access to opportunity. And it's interesting, we're a bank, so we often look at the bottom line, but I'll tell you, if you go to Detroit, the bottom line there is you now see a sense of hope among young people that there's a future in that community. In fact, if any of you missed, the New York Times a couple of weeks ago just called, did you see that? Called Detroit the most exciting city in America. Because people are working again, and they see the dignity and the opportunity that comes with it. And that's why we are so committed to this model, to the fund, because it works. It has impact. It changes people's lives, and it changes communities. And what is so important is the partnership, the collaborative, because you don't treat people just like your funders, give us a check and go away, but let's learn from each other. Let's build partnerships. Let's figure the best practices. Let's share data. Let's define common goals. And let's work together to find innovative solutions between employers and trainers so that we're really finding the most effective ways to get people into the workforce. And this is how we make the greatest impact, by working together, by collaborating, by all of us bringing the best of ourselves and our resources. So we are deeply grateful for the partnership. I'm deeply grateful for the work that our team and so many of you are doing, and very honored to have a chance to be here today. So thank you for everything you're doing. Thanks, Fred. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter. I hope we got that on tape. That's great. And yes, congratulations on the work you're doing in Detroit. And I think it's great that there's a recognition for the leadership that JPMorgan Chase has shown in Detroit. But as Peter mentioned, not only has JPMorgan Chase stepped up nationally, as a number of other national funders here today have, they've also stepped up locally to provide a significant amount of investment for our local collaboratives. That's incredibly important. Before we move on to the next panel, led by Whitney Smith, I think that I saw Lori Butters arrive. Come here. Come on, Lori. Come on. And your daughter? Come on. Come on, let's go. Pete? Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming. Great. Thank you. Really. Come over there and get your commemorative plaque from Peter. Okay. Turn around so you can get a picture. Okay, great. Thank you. And Patrick, Pete, don't stand against the wall, Pat. Come on. Take a seat. We've got some seats. Okay. So in this booklet, this commemorative booklet that I hope you all take home and have the chance to look through, on the back cover you'll see a list of all of the funders that have national funders that have supported the National Fund. And so we've asked Whitney to moderate a panel. And so we'd ask Julie Gehrki from Walmart, Sarah Key from the Prudential Foundation, Mary Sellers from United Way Worldwide, and Marci Hunn to come forward and have a panel and a little discussion about the work of the National Fund.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to start off on a personal note and say what a thrill it is to be part of the 10-year celebration. I first got involved in the National Fund about 6 years ago as a funder of CareerStat, which I know many of you in the room know about, really recognizing hospital leaders for their investments in frontline workers and sharing practices with other hospital leaders. And it's, I will say, been my family in the workforce development space. We often talk about one of the biggest values that the National Fund provides is a network of learning. And I don't know of any other organization that has personally taught me as much as the people doing the work on the ground. So just really excited to be here, and it's great to see so many friends in the audience. With that note, as Fred said, we have lots of partners that make the impact of the National Fund, but our national philanthropic partners are a huge part of that, and we wanted to lift up the voices of some of our partners and hear how they got attached to the National Fund, what's kept them intrigued, and how you've partnered over time. And we're gonna, of course, start with Marci Hunn, who's a program director at the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation. Many of you know Marci. She has been with the fund since day one, and in fact, was at the press club when the National Fund was launched. So we're going to start with Marci. Tell us how you first got engaged and what sustained that engagement over a 10-year period.
Well, thank you, Whitney. And I'd like to say congratulations to the National Fund on 10 years. It's amazing being here 10 years later. And I would just like, for anyone else who was here on that first day 10 years ago, if you wouldn't mind standing up. I know a few of you are in the audience here. Just, thank you for your commitment to the National Fund. That's awesome. So thank you for coming today. And on behalf of the staff and trustees of the Weinberg Foundation, we are so thrilled to continue our partnership with the National Fund. It has been a learning experience. We've come a very far way from the beginning. And I would say our reasoning for really becoming involved was to help break down the silos within our local communities. And as a national funder, we thought this would be a great opportunity to learn from each other, from national funders. We are a direct service funder, so we don't support policy or advocacy. And this was a great way to bring different foundations together that can align their efforts and resources to really make some impact. And I wear many hats within the National Fund world, within Baltimore and Chicago. And it's really helped educate me and the foundation on where we should be putting our resources. We believe in industry partnerships. We believe strongly in sector strategies. And I think that that's really the way that the funding community and even the public funding has moved toward. I don't think that the WIOA would have moved in the direction it was without the support of the National Fund, among other national partners. I think the long-term impact has been very positive. And just one quick example, in Baltimore, there was a period of time where we were looking for a manufacturing partnership because we kept hearing from employers about the demand for welders and CNC machinists. And if it wasn't for a relationship with Jane Addams Resource Corporation in Chicago and several state and local and private funders coming together at the funding collaborative table, the Baltimore Workforce Funders Collaborative table, we helped bring JARC to Baltimore. Elaine Carroll is here. I'm going to point her out right now. She's the director in Baltimore. And I would say it was because of the National Fund we were able to bring this quality program to Baltimore that has industry advisory council that is doing amazing work and helping increase opportunities for Baltimore City residents to really get great jobs in the manufacturing sector. So that's just one example of
Great
many.
example. Yeah, I mean, we've heard this from many national funders over time that the infrastructure of having an organization that has a national organization but local community work going on is a great way for national funders to track what's happening on the ground and add to our impact. So thank you for that. I'm going to actually go to the end to Julie next. Julie is the director of programs at Walmart Foundation and a good friend. Thank you for joining us on stage. She's one of the newest national funders, so we wanted to bring in the perspective of a new foundation. We also know with Walmart you're investing in workforce development from the philanthropy side, but a lot internally on the company side. So tell us about that and your connection to the National Fund.
Sure. I want to echo thank you for having me, and congratulations to the fund. Our story, in many ways, sounds like the story of JPMorgan Chase that Peter shared. As we think about what our role is as Walmart and the Walmart Foundation, we actually don't have a set of issues that the foundation supports and then our CSR team supports. That's an integrated list of issues, and how we think about our approach is think of putting issues that are incredibly relevant to the company where we have expertise, resources, ways of working that could change the issue to create business value and social and environmental impact. And then think of everything the business can do, leverage the expertise, pursue shared value in the business, but then also recognize it often doesn't solve everything. We want to change a system, and those are they're gaps, and that's where our philanthropy plays a role. But also underlying that approach is this real belief in collaboration. Even as big as Walmart is, we cannot do it alone. And it's literally embedded in our strategy is collaboration and partnership. So when you think about workforce development, we have over 1 million employees in the US. We have a history, 75% of the field management started as hourly associates. And 2 years ago, we announced a $2.7 billion investment in education, training, and wages, and have been really looking at how we transform the system of workforce within the company. And that's resulted in things like, I don't see, my colleague Kristen is here, who's built 200 training academies across the country to upskill our workforce, and in 2 years trained over 225,000 associates. So you get all of that working through the business, but then we thought, okay, how do we make this actually normative in the retail sector? How do you really lean into retail strengths that it has few barriers to entry, you can gain skills on the job, you can move up, and make that really the way it works? And so the foundation has been investing, has a $100 million investment over 5 years in creating that piece of the work. And the National Fund is a natural partner in that. When you think about the philosophy embedded in what we do, that we aspire to change the system, that we want to do that collaboratively, the natural approach of Walmart that recognizes national systems are needed, but that local relevance is essential, each store is not the same. And so that infrastructure and expertise that is both local and national resonates with us. This ability to engage in deep expertise at both levels is where we find that we can really create impact. And so it's been exciting. Our most recent investment, and we were an early funder that then has come back, has been $2.8 million, and it's working in 3 communities, Seattle, Des Moines, and Baltimore, to really build out a retail sector approach to complement all the great work that locations have learned in some of the work of the other sectors. So, and conversations like this morning help us be better.
Yeah, what Julie's referring to is we had a leadership meeting this morning, and we're starting to pull the lessons, the early lessons from those 3 sites, which of course then we'll share across the other collaboratives who are also thinking about retail and the virtuous circle of learning. So I want to bring Mary Sellers into the conversation. She's the relatively new CEO of United Way Worldwide. We're thrilled that she could join us here. She is familiar with our model because before becoming at the helm of the United Way Worldwide, she was at the United Way in Central Iowa, which of course sponsors Central Iowa Works, one of the funder collaboratives. And people, I think, around this room know of the 33 collaboratives, United Way hosts 9 of those, but then many more that are not hosted at United Way have United Way as one of the funding collaborative partners. So it's been really a strong partnership. And we wanted to just get your perspective on why United Way should come to the table, be engaged at the local level in these collaboratives, and what your experience with the fund has been.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I just have to clarify a bit. I'm the U.S. president.
USA, I know, right?
Brian Gallagher, who's the CEO, might take exception to that. So, but no, it's a thrill to be here. And this was the first invitation I got in my new role, was to attend this event. And given my experience at the local level with the National Fund, it was one that I circled the date on. So we hosted the board in Des Moines a little over a year ago now. So it was wonderful to have them in that community. But United Way Worldwide really has been partnering since 2007. And we went through about a 7-month readiness assessment back then for local United Ways to get engaged in this work. And today, there are the most successful local United Ways doing workforce development were, in some cases, from that original cohort. I see Rob Reifschneider from United Way of Greater Cincinnati, Paula Gilberto from United Way of Central and Northeastern Connecticut, and I think Elizabeth Buck snuck in from United Way of Central Iowa, my former employer. Oh, and is that Jennifer Sampson from Dallas is here. So to my colleagues in the room that are heading up local United Ways doing this important work, thank you for what you do at the local level, and thank you for what you do at the national level in terms of the virtuous learning circle. But I do think it's important for United Ways to be in this work. We had 10-year goals that we set as a field 10 years ago, and one of them was income. And this was an important element of that income work. And if you look at United Way's work in local communities, we come together and we bring cross sectors together to address our community's most pressing issues. And when you look at what Peter was referring to in the pressing issue of jobs and workforce, well, it makes sense that local United Ways would be engaged in these collaboratives to respond to community need, whether it be workforce development in advanced manufacturing or energy or healthcare or financial services or whatever the issue might be in terms of workforce and how to solve that. United Way should be at that table and working cross-sector as we do in all of our work to try to address that most pressing need. So this is a natural fit for United Ways. It's the foundation of how we respond and reflect our communities in our everyday work.
Wonderful, thank you. And Sarah, last but not least, from Prudential, as the Director of Corporate Giving. I think similar to what you heard Julie say from Walmart, Prudential really is investing both from a business perspective and also in a philanthropic sense in creating families who are financially strong. And talk to us about what role a strong workforce system plays in achieving that mission.
Yeah, and I just want to echo what everybody else has said in terms of congratulations to the National Fund on this 10th anniversary, and it's such a pleasure to be with you all today. For those of you who don't know, Prudential was founded 140 years ago to provide affordable insurance for people who were in underserved communities when there was a time when companies didn't feel like people who were in poverty could pay their premiums. And so we were founded on the belief that everybody should have the opportunity for financial security. But we know that opportunity gap is widening and that it begins with making sure that people have the right skill sets to be able to be connected and have access to a quality job. And at the very basic form, a quality job has livable wages, stable working schedules, safe working conditions, benefits, and career advancement opportunities. And there's so many more attributes to that, but at the very foundational level. And so we know that, you know, as everybody has said on this panel, the work happens in the local communities, and it's very important that each business, each sector, each community, each industry has their own specific needs and their own specific partnerships with the local workforce. And then how do you aggregate all of that data, but then also scale successful practices? And so the National Fund for us was a natural partner in that they have a unique role in all of this, that they're the intermediary between employers, educational institutions, workforce training providers, public government agencies, and just being able to connect that all. And for us, we have a really strong focus on financial wellness and financial security. I'm sure some of you know a lot of the data out there, but over 60% of Americans don't even have $500 to pay for an emergency if their car had trouble or if they had a health emergency or some kind of disability. That means that people are taking out $500 on their credit card, going to their family member to borrow money because they just don't have that kind of savings. And so how do we make sure that working people, when back in the day, the American dream was that if you worked hard, you'd be able to prosper and, you know, buy a home and retire with dignity, it just doesn't exist anymore. And so how do we make sure that not only are we building skill sets that are in demand, but that they're connected to jobs that are providing the right kind of benefits and products and tools to ensure that people are able to save and protect their wealth for the future.
Great, thank you. So this is our 10th year anniversary. We're celebrating the work that has led up to today, but I thought I would end by kind of going down the line and ask a little bit future-oriented question, which is just based on your own work, focusing on these goals around workforce development, financial security, economic opportunity. What is one thing, I know there are probably many, so just to mention one thing that's kind of top of mind that the National Fund should be paying attention to as we look forward into the future for the next 10 years. And we'll just, it doesn't, I didn't mean
I can't
that,
do just
it's
one.
weighted, yes.
Yeah.
You could mention two.
Okay. It's hard to get to one. But I think, you know, we talk about the quality of jobs and about advancement, and that's something that we need to continue to look at, especially for those who are being served by the National Fund organizations. And then two, and this is a little selfish, it's a new priority that we have at the Weinberg Foundation, but in the job readiness continuum, we really need to look at the front end and the education of those who are being served and those who want to who want to become employed. And so I think adult basic education, which has been shifted from education to Department of Labor funding and has kind of lost its way a little bit in local communities is something that really needs to be focused on. And so organizations that are then connecting with the workforce training programs or providers is something that I think is really important. And there are models like the Excel model based out of Goodwill of Indiana. There's one here in DC a couple blocks away. But it's something that I would recommend looking into to connecting to our workforce system so that more people who want to become employed can become employed.
I would say from a United Way standpoint, I mentioned that workforce was part of our first 10-year goals, but the highlight of that goal was around income. And we're getting ready to launch in the first and second quarter of 2018 our next 10-year goals. And we're putting a finer point on income, and it's really going to center around workforce and jobs. And so I think the collaborative nature at the national level and the local level is wonderful, and I just think that more of that would be great.
I think the focus, we've talked a lot about job quality, and Julie and I were having this conversation earlier that job quality obviously doesn't resonate as well with employers. It's all about, what is the business impact, what is the productivity and growth, and how are we going to make sure that we're moving people across the spectrum from, resiliency to stability to mobility to prosperity. And I think for the work of the National Fund is really helping to build the capacity at the local level to really look at, how do we make sure that local organizations feel that they are capable and have the ability to help shift business practices and policies with employers so that they know what kind of benefits and what kind of advancement opportunities should be given. And at the same time that we can create this movement with employers to have a more steady improvement on that side. And so businesses see the business value in that in terms of increased productivity and the ability to scale.
Yeah. I'm going to mention two things very quickly. I think in a context recognizing that work is probably going to change incredibly over the next 10 years. And it's going to be an incredibly dynamic space, not that the last 10 years haven't, but often that story is told with technology as a disruptor. I think there are actually incredible opportunities to use technology to upskill, to build job quality. We're experimenting with the company is experimenting with virtual reality as a training device. There are all kinds of things that we'll have to figure out in local communities where this disruptive piece also is used to harness and really be a positive force in training. Alongside that, and related to what Sarah was talking about, I think that the world of ESG metrics, environmental, social, and governance metrics, that companies report on is going to need the work of the Workforce Fund, the National Fund, and others to really set the right social metrics that are holistically looking at job quality, are thinking about how we incentivize mobility, all of these pieces that will shape how employers think about what good looks like and how they move along a continuum are going to need a more robust set of tools. And so that your work is just, at the local level, is just a little bit easier to get the employer on board, for them to understand what good looks like. And that these issues will strengthen their business and drive retention and productivity and pieces of that nature.
Thank you. Well, I want to say on behalf of the entire board, thank you for your partnership to date. I know that it will continue into the future, and just thank you for being here, and we look forward to the celebration afterwards.
Thank you very much. That was really good. And as you can tell, Whitney knows how to moderate a panel. One of the things that we wanted to celebrate today, and so please bear with us, we are the backbone organizations that have supported our 32 collaboratives. And fortunately, we have, I think, 25 of our backbone organizations here this afternoon. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask that Larry Beck and Denise Schoenfant, two of our board members, come forward, and I am going to just announce the person and the name of the backbone organization that houses our collaborative in that particular region. So first of all, I'm going to start with Ivy Allen, representing the Foundation for the Mid-South, host of the Mississippi Delta Workforce Funder Collaborative, Ivy. Judith Bell, representing the San Francisco Foundation, host of the Bay Area Workforce Funders Collaborative. We can hold our applause till the end. Kelly Ryan, representing the Encourage Foundation, host of Workforce Central. Andy Coplin, representing the Greater New Orleans Foundation, host of the New Orleans Works. Paula Gilberto, representing the United Way of Central and Northeastern Connecticut, host of the Workforce Solutions Collaborative of Metro Hartford. Linda Dworak, representing the Association of Baltimore Area Grant Makers, host of the Baltimore Workforce Funders Collaborative. Why don't you stay? Kelly just overruled our plan, so what the heck, you know. Maria Ivye, accepting the award on behalf of the Gulf Coast Community Foundation and the United Way. I'm glad you're here, Maria. I didn't see you. Thank you so much for coming. United Way, Suncoast, and supporters of the Career Edge Funders Collaborative. Earl Buford, representing Employ Milwaukee, host of the Milwaukee Area Workforce Funder Alliance. Slide down. Sarah McCullough and Karnisha Kawashi, representing the United Way of Greater Philadelphia and Southern New Jersey, host of the Job Opportunity Investment Network. Kimberly McLean, representing the Newark Alliance, host of the CareerWorks Greater Newark Workforce Funders Collaborative. Elizabeth Buck, great to see you again, Elizabeth, representing the United Way of Central Iowa, host of the Central Iowa Works Collaborative. Kathy Rizalski, representing the Lancaster County Workforce Development Board and a partner of the Central PA Works Funders Collaborative. Ladies and gentlemen, our backbone organizations. Thank you. That was great. We're going to have another 12 in a few minutes, so hang on to your hats. So one of the things that we had, of course, the national funders here at a panel, and without them, the National Fund could not have gotten off the ground. But without the local funders that have provided $318 million in matching funds, we could not have done our work. So we've asked Stacy Palmer, the editor of the Chronicle of Philanthropy, to moderate the next panel, which will include an example of three of our local funders, so that the panel can come forward. Stacy, come on up. And it's going to be Ivy Allen, President and CEO of the Foundation of the Mid-South, Kelly Ryan, President and CEO of the Encourage Foundation, and Judith Bell, Vice President of Programs, the San Francisco Foundation. Stacy, thank you so much for moderating.
Wonderful to be with you today, and congratulations. This is really exciting, and I love that all of you came to Washington to remind us of what is going on that is positive, because we needed that, especially in these somewhat difficult days. So thank you for all the work that you all do, and I am delighted to be able to moderate this panel on local solutions, because we just heard how important your organizations are. I thought it might be great if we could hear a little bit about the work you're actually doing. Then I want to talk about the effect on grant making and some lessons you've learned that really help all of philanthropy. And I want to talk about workforce development and some of the issues you see going in the future. And obviously we don't have a whole lot of time, so we're going to talk as fast as we can. But I wondered if you could introduce yourselves to, maybe most people know you, but not everybody does, and tell us about the work in your community as briefly as you can, and the results that you're most proud of. Who wants to start?
I would be happy to.
Great.
So my name is Kelly Ryan, and I represent Encourage, which is in central Wisconsin. And 17 years ago, we were very proud to say that we were the smallest city in the U.S. to be headquarters to a Fortune 500 paper company. And when that paper company sold in the year 2000, within 3 years, we lost 40% of our total manufacturing workforce. And when the National Fund was launched, at that time, Steve Gunderson, a former congressman from Wisconsin, was the CEO of the Council on Foundations, and he said, there's something happening here in DC around workforce, and you need to be involved. You need to know what's going on here around workforce and manufacturing. And at that time, the National Fund was looking at 6 urban sites. And we very quickly became champions and advocates for including rural America. So we became one of the first rural sites. We've been part of this for 10 years. And I want to say it was our good fortune that we became one of the first rural sites, because we didn't know what we didn't know about workforce, honestly. Everything in that community for 100 years was built in service of the paper industry, including our workforce system. So when that company moved the headquarters overseas, we really didn't have a workforce system that was developed to do anything other than technical training for the paper industry. So we had crisis, and we had in crisis also an opportunity for people to open their minds and think differently about how we'd approach this. So this solution of dual focus, what does the employer need, but also what does the worker need? It was a prime opportunity for us to seed new thinking, and it has produced tremendous results for us. One in particular that we're very proud of is when I say we had the system was really deficient. We have a technical college system in Wisconsin, not a community college system, workforce investment board, et cetera. But our tech college, everything was in furtherance of the paper industry. So we brought them along slowly over the last 10 years in terms of how to think differently about being responsive to manufacturing needs and being more innovative in terms of curriculum. And I'm happy to say that just in the last 6 months, they have just put a senior VP of workforce and economic development in place and 6 staff positions. So what started out as a partnership and us kind of helping them with baby steps, we're really turning that piece over to them, and they've institutionalized capacity in our community around the National Fund model, which is very exciting for us.
That's tremendous.
Okay. So I'm Judith Bell with the San Francisco Foundation, and we are the Bay Area's regional community foundation. So we are involved in 5 counties, San Francisco, San Mateo, Marin, Alameda, and Contra Costa. Very different story from what we just heard. The Bay Area Workforce Collaborative launched in 2004. And you know, we have a history we're very proud of. And I would say what we've really taken stock of over the last, I'd say, 18 months or so is how much more we need to do. You know, our contrast is that we have one of the hottest economies in the world, and we have growing inequality. We have a crisis around jobs, we have a crisis around housing, crisis around transportation. And so the real need for the collaborative to step up and to figure out how to get its work to an even greater scale, and how to focus on paying attention to workers' voices in that dynamic. You know, in the Bay Area, we have been a diverse region. We have been majority people of color now for more than 20 years. And so it's clear what our future is. And this, you know, frankly, our future is the future of the nation, but we're already there. And so we really have focused on what are the needs of low-income wage workers, low-wage workers, and how do we bring those voices in? How do we join with employers as well? And then how do we really take the system and, frankly, recognize the need that the system basically needs to be turned on its head and that we need to transform it? And that's how we're going to get to the level of scale and meet the level of need that is in our region so that, frankly, people can stay there, so that they can meet their basic needs, and so we can advance the conversation about how folks can get to that level of being able to thrive and reach their full potential. We're proud of the fact that in our work, we were early and strong funders of a statewide coalition in California called the EDGE Coalition that's actually moved some very substantial system changes, has touched on things people have mentioned earlier around adult education, around moving resources, and has a very strong set of folks around the table, labor, employers, and others, nonprofits, for instance, that have joined together in unusual ways to be able to move that agenda. And so we're proud of the way that we have helped to foster that. And we're proud of the fact that at this moment where we are changing and re-engaging as the Workforce Collaborative, that we have many new partners around the table and others, JPMorgan Chase and many others that have stuck with us over the long haul. And so we're in this moment. We have a new initiative officer, Rob Hope, who's here. We're super excited that he's joined us. And we see all sorts of potential as well as need in our region and are excited to be able to move that forward.
Terrific. Ivy?
My name is Ivye Allen, and I'm with the Foundation for the Mid-South. The Foundation for the Mid-South is a regional community foundation that covers Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, and primarily the contiguous delta areas of those communities. And so when we had the opportunity to join 10 years ago, as well as Kelly said, we were one of those small regional rural areas. And for us, when you look at our areas, one is not metropolitan, so you have to travel to jobs and different things like that. And for us, we were about how do we get more people to work? And being able to do that is obviously people have to travel, so we recognize that. But how do we work with partners that are already doing this work to be able to, quite frankly, inform people of opportunities that exist there, but also how do we help them get to those opportunities? And so I'm glad to say 2 of our partners are here. One of them works with me, Martha Claire Drysdale, but she started out at the community college in Mitzi with the Regional Workforce Development Board. And we've been with it from the very beginning, and it's been great having those public sector champions. One, we leverage their resources, but also we're able to really know what employers are looking for and who's really hiring. So we work hard at not training people just to be training them, as opposed to training them to go into opportunities. And so I'm pretty proud of the record that we had there. We started out doing pretty much work in manufacturing, and when we moved to transportation, distribution, and logistics, and healthcare. And in all 3 of those industries, we put a lot of people to work in small rural hospitals and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, those are jobs and jobs that pay self-sufficient wages, but also is helping people move their families forward. So we're pretty proud of the outcomes we've seen so far.
Pretty exciting stuff, I have to say. I'm just delighted to hear this. The other thing that strikes me in this conversation is I spend a lot of my time asking people about the problems in philanthropy and the challenges that they need to overcome, and they always talk about the fact that collaboration is difficult and sometimes doesn't happen, and especially it doesn't happen at the funder level as much as it does at the nonprofit level. What is it? What's the magic stuff that you have all done that have allowed collaboration to work? What lessons does it have for some of the other work that perhaps your foundations do and that you think philanthropy can learn from?
I would say for us, it was everybody coming in with a goal and a clear mission that we want to help, as opposed to we've got to be the voice, we have to take the credit. And so our team, I think it's fair to say, we work very well together about we all have something to offer, and therefore we all can take credit for something in that process. And being clear about the focus of people who are left behind, and this is an opportunity for them. So for us, it's about figuring out how to work together, everybody leaving their egos at the door, but most importantly, what metrics are we setting for ourselves? And then in turn, making sure that those residents are able to secure those jobs, and not just secure them, because we stay in touch with them to make sure they stay there, and they have the ability to ascend and go higher. And so for us, these are family folks in a way, although they may not be personal family members, but it really is small enough that we can keep in touch and understand what's going on. But we also work well with the employers who will tell us, don't send anybody like that again, and things of that nature. And you have to be able to hear that and understand and respect that in the process. And so for us, we invite people to tell us not only the good things, but the bad things as well, and figure out how we can address it.
You know, I would add, it's absolutely about vision, it's absolutely about purpose, and it is about thinking about the focus. I think it's also, you know, in the foundation world, you just have to recognize folks do come in with their own mandates, whether it's a geographic mandate or population mandate. So then it's figuring out how to not give up that vision, but be flexible in the implementation. And then the thing I would add is that it's also been, in our journey, I'd say, figuring out how to make it also a learning community. And giving people the opportunity both to be deep members around the table and contributors and bringing their resources, right, for that pool. But at the same time, allowing folks to, you know, take a step in and not, when they're not ready to jump in. And to have that learning be a place where people feel like they can learn about new things, they can stretch themselves and think about how they can stretch their institution, and then begin to build that sense of why they'd want to join the collaborative. I mean, I think ultimately everyone knows they cannot solve this problem themselves. Like, that's just a given. There's nobody who works in this arena who thinks they're going to solve it themselves. So then it's about how much honey do you have to attract all those bees and to keep them buzzing together in a way that feels like it's reaching goals they could not get to themselves and that they can share in the credit in getting there.
Briefly, I would say at three levels. One is locally. We were very intentional outside of workforce before we started this effort. In our community, our efforts have been squarely focused on culture change and how do we foster a culture that is less dependent, less paternal, less hierarchical than one that was grounded in a single industry. And we have found over the last 17 years it really rests on the adaptive skills and the ability between and among human beings who share a place and share a destiny to build trust in relationships. And so we've woven adaptive skills and adaptive norms into every aspect of our work, including our workforce efforts. So really at the local level, it's about trust, you know, establishing trust and norms of the employer can say, don't send me something like that again. At the network level, among the National Fund, I want to say the collaboration has been remarkable because we all have a shared interest, right? So it goes to that shared vision and the ability to learn from what, you know, Chicago is doing and what Des Moines is doing and others, fosters collaboration among the sites based on interest. So each of us might be slightly different, but a handful of us are in a group focused on job quality. So finding that common area of interest is what fosters then mutual gain and the greater ability to collaborate. And then nationally, I just want to say one of my fondest memories of being part of the National Fund was at a Council on Foundations annual conference, and they give out something called the Critical Impact Award every year. And you don't generally see national foundations pooling resources and collaborating in a very broad way with many of them at the same table, crossing mission because everyone saw that workforce or human potential was key to the future of the nation. And I don't think I've ever seen it since that day on that national stage when the National Fund for Workforce Solutions received the Critical Impact Award for collaboration. And some of you are in the room here, including Mark Popovich in the back, who was with Hitachi Foundation at the time, right? A number of you were on the stage, and it was remarkable. I think it models good behavior for others.
It does indeed. That's part of why I asked the question. And because the work that you have done has been so influential that way, has it changed any of the other areas that you work in beyond worker training? And also, obviously, these issues are all connected to so many other things. Ivy talked about transportation, which you don't necessarily think of the first thing about worker training, but of course it's essential. What are the other ways that you would say your foundations have been affected by this work?
Well, you know, our foundation, the San Francisco Foundation, over the last couple years has embraced racial and economic equity as our North Star. And what has been wonderful for us as being the backbone for the Workforce Collaborative is we've been able to be in a back and forth with the collaborative. So just as we are launching our new agenda and thinking about it from our perspective of people, place, and power, we're integrating and figuring out, well, what part of the workforce effort are we going to do, because the collaborative has identified something else, and what is the collaborative doing? So we're a member, but then we're leveraging and learning with the collaborative. And so it's given us an opportunity to both learn, build stronger partnerships, and have our effort constantly be connected to this larger circle and to this larger vision.
I would sit and say for us, it's an opportunity to work across sectors. We work a lot with the public sector, and I would have, I thought about it when we first started. I can honestly say I don't know that I ever thought we would be as close as we are today. And it's not as a negative, it's just we hadn't had that type of, we work primarily with foundations and then with other nonprofit organizations. But the glue and a piece of this really has kept us strong is our public sector partners, because they come with resources, quite frankly, that's far significant than ours. But we come with helping find the people and making sure that these folks are successful in doing extra things to make sure that folks can go through these programs, they're successful in these programs. So everybody comes with their resources, whether it's money, it's connections, or other things, in order to make sure that this is successful. And so for us, I think it has been a great opportunity to figure out how to work with public partners and be able to sit and say, everybody has their own objective. Some people are not comfortable with our mission, which is to invest in people and strategies that promote racial, social, and economic equity. So equity makes some people uncomfortable, and we respect that. And so we have to figure out ways of how we stick to our core, but also respect what their goals and objectives are in this process and not make people be uncomfortable about it. Are we intentional sometimes about trying to make sure we have more people of color participating in these programs? We want to, but it's also where that population that's left behind is. And so being able to not talk about it just about race, but about what's equity and what's really going to make this region move is more of that population being successful. And so for us, that can make very much public sector folks uncomfortable with that type of language, and we know how to be respectful about it, but be clear about how, in order to move this region, we have to understand who we have to move in that process. And so for us, I think being able to partner with public sector folks who may not have that same goal, but are comfortable with understanding what we're all trying to do at the end, and that is to move people to work.
I think among the three of us on stage, we all share the value and the commitment to equity, and how it's affected us and our work has been, I think, on a number of fronts. One, we have a commitment across the community to restore a sense of agency among the people that live in that place, that it is their community, it's theirs to shape, it's not a single company. So our challenge has really been embedded cultural norms and mindset, but growing a sense of agency means sharing power and privilege. And the National Fund was our first kind of formalized initiative that focused on user, right? What does the worker need to be successful, and what does the employer need to be successful? So it really was our early foray into really truly committing as an organization to be user-centered in all that we do. And it's extended beyond workforce. It's influenced the way we do our grant making, how we share power with our residents, how our community helps to identify priorities for our investment portfolio. And then I would say that's the third and really significant way that it has affected our work is this economy of ours in central Wisconsin was not going to be turned around just by us participating in the National Fund, and it was going to take more than the 5% annual payout or distribution that we had as a foundation to turn this around. And our board wisely 4 years ago determined that we needed to commit 100% of our capitals, including our finance, to our mission, which was creating a community that works well for all. So we have deployed right now over a third of our investment, our endowment, to aligned job quality metrics in our community, to aligned CDFIs that are helping us grow good companies from inception that value human capital from the beginning and have a community benefit lens. And then recently launched, which I'm very proud of, a Wisconsin equities portfolio that we created ourselves with a lot of assistance, of course, but So we own shares in all publicly traded firms in Wisconsin, with higher weight given to those that operate in our community, so that we in fact can apply screens around ESG, and we own Walmart, we're happy to say, but we also own every other paper company that still exists in our community. And whether they're actually owned by a paper company or they're owned by a private equity firm, let me say that, and declare multiple bankruptcies over the last several years, so that we, as a place-based investor, can use every tool that we have in our voice in terms of shareholder activism, right, to advance good practice and also to actually register a complaint on behalf of the community and workers when there isn't good practice.
So what's next, and what keeps you up most at night as you think about what's next and what's most important for you and your community to tackle on workforce development?
I would just say what keeps me up at night is what Judith alluded to earlier, and it was something I mentioned and we talked about a bit earlier today, is that we have to step back and look at the system itself. Because I think the system is not working well for all people, and evaluate who does that system privilege and benefit just by virtue of what's baked into it that's not just, right? Are there structural inequities in the way that we have developed workforce, and how are we including, with great intentionality, worker voice that's not baked into the system right now. And in fact, we have so many divisions as a country around race, class, gender, that we need to step back and look at the whole system. And as you said, turn it upside down. I think that's what keeps me up at night is, you know, it feels like bandage approaches. And please don't get me wrong, everything we're doing is really, really important. It is. But we have to change the system.
Yes. And I would say that the urgency of the need, you know, in the Bay Area, we have tent cities that are popping up all over our urban areas. It's because many people are working and they simply cannot afford anymore the very basics of shelter. And so the idea that you have people who are working, who are living in their cars or living on the streets, and where there just isn't enough that the system is doing, and that there is so much inequity baked in, that when you look at who are the lowest wage workers and who have had the hardest, who are the hardest, who have found it the hardest to advance, it does, over and over, it's people of color and the inequities that have been baked in over the years. And so there's just this great need for transformation. And so what I worry about is that we're not going to be able to move fast enough, and that we're not going to be able to do what people need to do to be able to work. And to be able to make what they need for themselves and their families. I do think the need is so great. So on some level, because we're in crisis, people actually are ready to step up in a different kind of way. So, you know, that's what allows me to fall asleep finally when I'm up at night. But it is this sense of urgency and crisis, and whether we can marshal enough in this time to meet people's needs.
I echo that. I think for us, it's always about, you know, with folks, there are not enough opportunities for the people who want at least secure jobs. And so with us, I'm proud of what we do, but it's just a heck of a lot more people unemployed than there are jobs that are available there. And for some folks, this is home. This is what I know. I don't want to leave. But then there are limited opportunities. And so being able to, as you talk about systems, but also how do we re-envision some of these communities and be able to not look for the big elephant corporation, because they're not coming there, but how do you try to identify other opportunities and, quite frankly, support entrepreneurship in other ways to put people to work, to create and continue to help our communities be vibrant, because it's just not enough of those regular jobs to meet the needs of all the folks who are there.
And we also know that nonprofits and social enterprises need great workers too, so let's keep them in the equation as well. I want to thank all of you for all of your tremendous work. It's just amazing. I know it does keep you up at night, but you are contributing in tremendous ways. So thank you for all of your great comments, and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I mean, I think from these two panels, you can understand how excited we are about what we've accomplished, but also how excited we are for the future because of the tremendous leadership level at so many, at the national funders level, at the local funders level, at the collaborative level. So it's a great thought to think about what we're going to do in our next 10 years. The expression that success has 1,000 mothers and fathers and failure is an orphan would make me want to avoid this, what I'm going to say next, because I'm sure I'm going to leave out some people who were at the beginning. But I'm going to take the risk of mentioning some people who were there at the very beginning, who thought about the strategy of what the National Fund could be. And I think it's important that, and some of them are here today, some of them are not, but I want to just mention a few. And I want to ask them to stand as I mention them. Angel Bermudez. Angel was at the Boston Foundation, helped to create SkillWorks, and began the conversations around what we could do nationally to replicate what was going on in Boston, and as you heard, what was also going on in San Francisco. Both of those funder collaboratives existed before the National Fund existed. And as part of that conspiracy, there was a guy from the Ford Foundation who also joined with him, who is also here today, John Coburn. And the third conspirator was Bob Giloth from the Annie E. Casey Foundation. And Bob couldn't be here today, but Allison Gerber is here today. Allison, why don't you stand for Bob? So we owe a debt of gratitude, and we want to also thank the Annie E. Casey Foundation for being one of the co-sponsors for this event. Those three people, as well as many others, were involved early on. And there's just four more names I want to mention. Obviously, you heard Marci Hunn was there, and the Weinberg Foundation. Please, Marci, stand up. Jane Poland was there at the beginning, and we want to thank you very much, Jane. And the Hitachi Foundation was one of our great supporters in the beginning. Barbara Dyer, our first chair of our investor committee, could not be there, but Mark is here, Mark Popovich. And the investors made a decision that they didn't want to spend a lot of time getting us, incorporated and developing our financial systems, personnel policies. So they said, you know what? We want to put you inside of another organization that can incubate you. Isn't that the right word, Maria Flynn? Maria Flynn, representing Jobs for the Future. So we really appreciate those folks, and I hope I didn't lose. Okay, there it is. Okay, so again, I'm sure there are others. I know Stacy Wagner said she was here at the beginning when the fund was announced here at the National Press Club. Someone else stood up that I didn't realize was here at the beginning. Who else was here at the announcement that I haven't mentioned? Oh, good. Okay, great. I'm glad I've got everybody. Okay, so we want to continue to present these small awards to some of the backbone organizations that are really the reason why the National Fund has been a success. I mean, we always say that the expertise in this National Fund, the expertise is in the field. And we go out and we basically learn from the field and we try to bring it to the other collaboratives as well. But this is where we have such tremendous support. And so I just wanted to list another group of folks, and we'd like them to come up. And I want to have a couple of board members come up to the stage. Molly Seals and Earl Buford are going to present Molly Seals and Paula Gilberto are presenting the awards for this group. Okay. So let me start out by Matt Bruce, representing the Chicago Community Trust and host of the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance. Clorinda Harrison, is she here from? Oh, there she is. Oh, Clorinda, welcome. One of the newest directors, representing the United Way of Southeastern Michigan, host of the Detroit Regional Workforce Fund. Clorinda started work about 2 weeks ago? 4 weeks ago. Okay, well, in that case, she's a veteran. Okay. From right here in Washington, D.C., Benton Murphy and Dawn Leary, representing the Greater Washington Community Foundation and host of the Greater Washington Workforce Funder Collaborative. And from the Big Apple, Pat Jenny, representing the New York Community Trust, host of the New York City Workforce Development Fund. And one of the great leaders in the United Way field, Robert Reifschneider, representing the United Way of Greater Cincinnati and host of the Partners for a Competitive Workforce. Matt, I think you're going to have to move down a little. Okay. Another great United Way leader, Jennifer Sampson, representing the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas, and the host of the Pathways to Work. Sandra Koblis, representing Austell, USA, an employer partner of SAWDC, the Southwest Alabama Workforce Development Council. We were disappointed that Laura Chandler, who is the director of SAWDC, could not be here today. She's a member of our Partners Council, but she's been a great leader in the National Fund and has done great work in Mobile. And then the inimitable Susan Crane, from representing the Seattle Foundation and Skill Up Washington. Susan? I was trying to think of another adjective, Susan, but it stop. Okay, I'll stop. All right. Okay. Michael, she's one of a kind, definitely. Okay. Michael Gritton, representing Kentuckiana Works of Wired 65. And one of the economic development organizations that has helped us look at economic development and workforce development coming together, Dominic Robinson, representing Center State CEO, host of the Work Train Collaborative. On the previous panel, we were supposed to have Paul Grogan, president of the Boston Foundation. Unfortunately, Paul contracted the flu a couple of days ago and couldn't make it. And the Boston Foundation, and their support for SkillWorks has just been tremendous, and it was disappointing not to have Paul here, but fortunately, we do have the new director of SkillWorks, Mary Beth Campbell, representing the Boston Foundation and host of SkillWorks. We better move down some more. Okay. And then Tammy Simmons, representing Machine Specialties, an employer partner of the Triad Workforce Solutions Collaborative in Greensboro, North Carolina. And is Milton Little, did Milton arrive here? Milton said he was going to get here tonight. Oh, Milton Little has been just a great leader in Atlanta, and Milton would be here. He represents the United Way of Greater Atlanta and host of the Atlanta Career Rise Collaborative. So he may be here a little bit later. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is a great group, isn't it? One of the great treats of having a 10th anniversary is the opportunity to introduce a organization that has been a funder in the past and has decided to take another look at the National Fund. And so what we want to do is just give a few moments to Sam Whiting, the director of Boeing Global Engagement for the Western region of the Boeing Company. Named to his position in May of 2016, Sam is responsible for developing and executing strategies that will cultivate a diverse, adaptive, and competitive workforce that strengthens the manufacturing industries and prepares our community for another century of innovation and success. Sam is here to make a little bit of a happy announcement. Sam Whiting.
Thanks, Fred. Hi, everybody. Very excited to be here participating in the 10th anniversary celebration. As Fred said, I'm Sam Whiting. Tomorrow is the 10th anniversary of my first day at the Boeing Company. And I am lucky to not only be the global engagement lead for Boeing Commercial Airplanes, but also be the strategy lead for the company for what we call our future. And I will get back to that in a second. We're really honored to be among colleagues who are dedicated to improving workforce outcomes for low-wage workers and also for job seekers. In fact, we just, in the last year, in 2016, realigned our strategies and then implemented them in 2017 to really elevate our commitments to this mission. In our strategies in Boeing Global Engagement, we support our future, our heroes, and our communities where our employees live and work, seeking the best application of our company's expertise and resources. We do this by developing tomorrow's innovators through investments in STEM and in the skills required for today's workforce, by aiding military veterans and families in transitioning into the civilian workforce, and by being a corporate leader in communities where employees live and work. In our future, remember, I mentioned that earlier, Boeing has a two-pronged approach that focuses on education and skills development, helping to create cradle-to-career pathways to strengthen and diversify the pipeline of skilled workers. First, we seek to improve kindergarten readiness, particularly in mathematics, generate interest and sustain participation in STEM through hands-on experiential learning, and graduate more students who are ready to enter industry-related careers or STEM-focused post-secondary education. The second part of our approach focuses on our support for workforce preparation. We help create new opportunities through strategic investments in career and technical education starting in and happening after high school, and programs that help young adults and underemployed adults gain the skills that they need to prepare them for family wage jobs in high-demand sectors. So this work, part of why I am in this job is because it holds very significant import for me myself. I had a very rocky educational career from which I barely escaped with a bachelor's degree, leading to low-wage work, which I loved, but was low-wage work. My reality really was working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet until I got a job at an employer that fundamentally believed in developing their own. What I thought was a stopgap job, when I didn't get a job I wanted, I took a job because I needed one. It turned my ideas around about what was possible for me in my career. I had a great boss, Hazel Van Ivre. Let's all take a moment to appreciate Hazel Van Ivre. And in the 6 years that I was in that job or worked for that organization, I went from a very entry-level position to being a director on the leadership team of the organization and having a graduate degree in my field. And that was all because the organization really cared about and really fostered the employees through on-the-job training and through encouragement to pursue education outside of the workplace. And that would never have happened if I had not worked, like where I am today would never have happened had I not worked there and had I not had the boss that I had, who was such a great boss. So we've been supporting the National Fund since our first grant for the manufacturing OJT program in 2012 in a variety of ways. And since that time, our relationship has grown in tandem with the growth of the fund. And building on that success, I'm proud to announce today that we are committing $1.5 million to the National Fund to continue the work through OJT, manufacturing OJT 2.0. Look, I have a check in my pocket. Thank goodness I remembered. It's very warm. So it's one small step in building a more robust workforce pipeline for the 388,000 manufacturing jobs that need to be filled in our country. And we are so excited and eager to continue this work and see the giant leap that we will make together. Thank you very much.
So, where's our treasurer? Denise? Oh, Sam, thank you very much. Let's give Boeing another round of applause. Thank you. So, we want to wrap up this celebration by asking our chairman, Pete Strange, to come up and give some closing remarks. We are blessed to have a great chairman, someone who understands our work, came up through the work in Cincinnati, has been a great leader over the last 2 years, continues to help us, inspire us, and sometimes make us laugh a little bit too, which is really important in this work. So Pete, why don't you wrap this up and we can get on to having a little libation next door. Okay? Pete Strange.
So you might wonder, what's a fellow like me doing here? It's because I am competitive. I have spent my entire life in construction, which is a hyper-competitive environment. We compete for projects, we compete for contracts, we compete for customers, and we take huge risks and put in huge efforts to achieve success. Well, about 30 years ago, I found myself in a position of representing the other employees of our company about whether the employees could buy the company, take the risk of owning our own future. And when we sat down and talked among ourselves what would make it worth taking that risk, how could we be sure we could deliver over time to the employees who followed us, we realized that there was no project, no contract, not even a customer that we could be sure of for 30 years. It's when we learned to focus on the real competition. The real competition is for the next generation of talent. And our being here and being involved with the National Fund is one of the clearest paths that we could find to winning that real competition. Now, I have a couple of jobs here to wrap up. One is I've got to do the housekeeping. Everyone who represented a backbone organization and received an award needs to come forward to the stage after we're done. That will accomplish two things. One, we will get a group picture of everyone all in one place. The other thing it accomplishes is the rest of us will be ahead of you in line at the celebration. Number two, I am charged with convincing you to attend the congressional briefing tomorrow on the Partners Act. It's from 11 to 12 at the Capitol Visitors Center, Meeting Room North. I think it's probably listed in our booklet there. You need to arrive because there is heightened security there. Arrive at the 1st Street Northeast entrance, that's the Supreme Court side, no later than 30 minutes before the scheduled starting time. But if you'll come, not only will you be sending some messages to some of our elected officials, but you're going to hear voices from across the National Fund network, plus voices from some of our congressional leaders. My other job is one that I'm really pleased with, and it's to say thank you. So I'd like to start by saying thank you to Fred Dietrich and his team. I'd like everybody who works for the National Fund to stand up. What you'll notice is that wasn't a lot of people. If there was ever a group of people that were punching above their weight, it is the folks who lead this effort at the national level, and I feel free to steal from folks, but to steal from Mr. Churchill, never have so many owed so much to so few as we owe to these leaders. Secondly, I want to congratulate and thank our frontline workers. What we've learned in leadership is that we'll get about 30% of what we tell other people. We'll get about 60% of what we teach other people. We'll get 100% of what we model for other people. And these are the folks who are modeling for the folks who come behind them, the pathways to success, which are going to change the world. So thank you very much. I'm going to do this. I want to thank our collaborative partners for fearlessly innovating, for ruthlessly measuring, which doesn't happen a lot in the nonprofit world, and for unselfishly sharing. That's the key to the change in the systems. I want to thank our employer partners for moving from the interview room, which was where we used to think we had our only responsibility. Everybody else did everything else. Send me some qualified candidates and I'm a great interviewer. For moving from the interview room out into the talent marketplace and being willing to engage workers where the workers are and grow their workers into a true competitive advantage. I want to thank our our funders. Thank you for moving away from project funding and embracing the long-term sorts of investments that are required to drive real systems change. We aren't where we want to be, we aren't where we need to be. But thanks to you, we're no longer trapped in the past, and we're making progress toward the future that we need. That future where we create vibrant vibrant communities where every citizen has both the opportunity and the motivation to be part of value creation. And finally, I want to thank the people in this room, because you're the people who started this, you're the people who have remained committed, you're the people who are going to move it into the future. I want to thank you for 10 years of making progress instead of making excuses. And I want to thank you for all that you're going to do to make the next 10 years even better. I think I've thanked everybody except the people who are going to serve the food and drinks. Let's go thank them together. Have a great evening.